Hello, everyone. I am Florence Chen, President of AIA Hong Kong Chapter. Thank you for joining us this evening. 2022 marks the 25th anniversary of AIA Hong Kong. While it is important to celebrate our chapter's history, we thought it's also very important that we look forward to the next 25 years, thinking about where are the opportunities for all of us. So here today, we're not trying to do fortune telling. However, we want to take a closer look at the Greater Bay Area development through this three-part symposium series. Tonight is the first of the three-part symposium titled Connectivity and Placemaking in the Greater Bay Area. We will look at macro and regional scales to understand how these 11 cities within the GBA work together to form a conglomerate from policy to infrastructural design. So before I get into tonight's content, I would first like to introduce Mr. Sean Chow, AECOM Global Business Line Chief Executive, Buildings and Places. It was Sean who inspired us to organize this GBA series. So let's see what Sean has to say about GBA. Sean?
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Florence. Well, first of all, I'd like to congratulate Hong Kong AIA for the 25th anniversary. I think I still remember 27 years ago when I moved from San Francisco to Hong Kong. I met with Nelson, everybody knows Nelson Chen, and then we were talking about how to establish Hong Kong AIA. Time does fly, it has been more than 25 years since I moved to Hong Kong. I'm very pleased that we have the opportunity to work with Hong Kong AIA to set up this opportunity for everybody to have opportunity to communicate and connect. I think later on, Professor Ye will talk about the Greater Bay Area. We know this is, and just think about the scale and the complexity of this metropolitan area is really, in a way, it's mind-boggling, but at the same time, give us tons of opportunity to reshape our future. I think when we talk about the future, is no longer only about sustainability and resilience. That's basically a must. We need to have a new approach, a new idea, how to set up our physical and psychological living environment. So connectivity is critical. The inclusiveness is also very, very critical. So thank you again for the team to set this up. And we have a few more events, and hopefully next time, we'll be able to see each other and sitting in the same room to continue to discuss this fascinating subject. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Sean. Yeah, and with that, I'm going to hand over the floor to Sujata Guvada, CEO and Managing Director of UDP International, a design and planning practice that has been based in Hong Kong since 1994. And Sujata is also our former president of AIA Hong Kong. So Sujata, yeah, you might want to unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Florence and Yimi. It's good to be back connected with AIA Hong Kong, as well as, especially because I'm in India, Bangalore now. It's to be back with all the people in Hong Kong and this fascinating event that you co-organized with AECOM. And I think Sean is right. It's a lot of a subject area that a lot of exploration needs to be done because of the scale of GBA, but also what it could be. If it's done very well, it could be fantastic, right? But if it's not done well, then it could become a huge disaster. So we really need to focus, because of all these 11 cities, how they can actually come together and work together. And I also think probably even Hong Kong and Shenzhen can come together and drive the GBA, and not only to shape the lives of people within GBA, but also maybe show the world how things can be done at this scale as well. So I'm sure Hong Kong will play a critical role. And I would like to really, I need to thank AIA for giving me this opportunity to moderate. And I'm happy to see all the speakers here. Many of you I've actually know quite well from a long time. And I would now, without taking too much of your time, I would introduce each speaker and then followed by their presentation. And then we go towards the end where there'll be a moderated discussion. First would be Professor Anthony Ye. And I don't know how many of you know, but I actually taught in Hong Kong U, and he was my boss at that time. He's a chair professor, Department of Urban Planning and Design, University of Hong Kong. And he's probably one of the first persons who's actually worked on GBA even before the GBA term was coined. In the 80s itself, he started working on the regional planning, Pearl River Delta and everything. So it'll be fascinating to hear what Professor Ye has to say about the overview, setting the scene for GBA. And I also want to ask him, before he starts off, maybe to share a couple things about himself, what he interests him and what he's done, other things that people may not know, given that, what Professor Ye is widely known for his research and everything. Thank you, Professor Ye. Go ahead.
Oh, thanks a lot. I will just tell you, well, people who know me know that I have many legs, right? I'm not only working on 2 legs, but many legs. And also GBA, as mentioned by Sujata, I've been working on it for more than 30 years, since 1980s. But also on top of that, I'm doing work on radar remote sensing, GIS, smart cities, and particularly smart mobility, and also, about my recent interest is about the development of central business districts in China and how it is going to develop. And recently, I really worked on something quite exciting to me. Is trying to have Hong Kong U staff to enter the campus without doing this QR code, so that we are able to use our mobile phone and then just walk through, right? So this is something that I'm now working on.
Thank you, Professor Ye. You can start your presentation.
Or maybe let me share my screen to you, and hoping you will see it. Okay, and can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very
you.
much.
You may want to put it on the presentation mode. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, right? Okay, and also first of all, happy 25th anniversary. 25 years is quite a long time, and
Yes.
also have all the accomplishments that you have made. And today, what I'm trying to do is to kick off the meeting by giving you a very quick overview of what we have been doing. For example, just now, Sean mentioned about the Northern Metropolis and a lot of discussions about it. Are we going the right directions, right? And why are we going to have to develop the Northern Metropolis? Is it something that we want to do? So basically, I think we have to answer the questions, right? What happened, and why are we doing it? And what will be the future, right? I think this is what I'm trying to answer today, okay? Now, if you look at the Pearl Delta from remote sensing, well, it's just one piece of land. But if you look into the details over here, you will find something that's a little bit interesting, is that they have boundaries, right? Also, we know that the Greater Bay Area, if you can see from the right-hand side corner, this is related to so-called 9+1, right? So you have the 9 cities in the Pearl Delta that we call, and now we have, including Hong Kong and the Macau and special administrative region, right? And so we have this Greater Bay Area, right? But the whole idea of this Greater Bay Area came in February 18, 2019, right? More or less like 3 years ago now, right? And because of this, we have this Greater Bay Area concept. Okay, and in this outline development plan for the Greater Bay Area, something that we really have to realize that the whole thing is talking about, we have 4 engines, Guangzhou, Shenzhen, Macau, Hong Kong, right? Okay? And in chapter 10 of this Greater Bay Area, it emphasized a lot about the cooperations between Hong Kong, Macau, and the Pearl Delta, right? And particularly, obviously, they are aiming at Hong Kong, right? So if you look at chapter 10, you will find all these type of new developments trying to aim to have better integrations and also cooperations with Hong Kong and Macau, right? But in 2019, right? So is it something new? Well, if you look into the history of the PRD, actually we in Hong Kong, we started this in 2001 by the former Chief Executive Dong Jianhua, okay? And so you will see that at that time, it is already in the policy address, already talking about the importance and the need, because Hong Kong at that time really at the crossroad of development, right? And so at that time, we have organized a lot of the seminars, conferences, big discussions at that time, right? For those who are maybe younger generations, you may not know about it, right? But these are the basic type of work. And actually, this type of work give the foundations for today's Greater Bay Area in terms of infrastructure. But look at the for example, the Lintang border, as well as the Hong Kong Macau, Hong Kong Zhuhai Macau Bridge, right? These are all being developed over there, and also a lot of the Western Corridor, etc. All have been developed, and so it takes more or less now 20 years. Okay, and these are some of these activities that we organize. We organize the first, Greater Bay Area, the type of transport seminar that was held in Guangzhou, right? So you can see a lot of discussions. And also in Hong Kong, we are also doing a lot of work about, how can we strategically to work together with the Greater Bay Area, right? And also in 2003, we look into the 4 pillars: finance services, tourism, trading and logistics, and producer services. They are all aiming at the Greater Bay Area, and also, I mean, the PRD, right? And also, we have this individual business scheme in 2003. So a lot of things have been happening. And also, we signed this SIPA arrangement, okay? But not only on this type of policy side, but even in urban planning, you will find that in the Greater Bay Area or the PRD, they are doing this more or less, well, the PRD doing their own regional planning, Hong Kong doing our own planning as well. But you can see there have been a lot of development. And particularly, I think this is related to the 208. You have the outline plan for the PRD, as well as in the 20110, we have this study on the action plan for a livable Bay Area of the PRD. That is basically also spearheaded by Mr. Ling, right, at that time, right? And so this is the development. So they are already talking about a lot of things, and also in the 2014, they already have the planning. But why today we have to discuss this again? Okay, why suddenly? Well, we've been already doing quite well, right? Now this is basically, I think I summarize it in Chinese. 十年河東，十年河西. In English, very simple. The tide has changed. As simple as that. What has changed, right? Obviously, the Hong Kong PRD cooperation, it actually have to date back in 1978, where we have the economic reform and a lot of factories moved to the PRD because of the cheap land and cheap labor, etc., where we keep our shops. So this is what is known as front shops, back factories model. And we relocate our factories there, but also at the same time, Hong Kong's shops benefit, right? So you can see that these are all these type of industries booming in the towns, in the PRD. At the same time, Hong Kong, because of that, developed into the Asia World City, right? So it's a greatest synergy. It's really the glorious time of the PRD or the Greater Bay Area. Really great cooperations, the free market economy at work. Okay, well, but how about this front shops, back factories model? Is it still working? But unfortunately, I think it has already been declining since year 2000. And also there are also a lot of changes going on that actually we cannot really rely on this model, right? It's outdated already. Why? Now, so here you can show you the Hong Kong, the transformation of Hong Kong economy, and from 1980 to 2014, you can see basically what I told you. The manufacturing sector is decreasing. We don't have any manufacturing anymore. All moved to the Pearl Delta. On the other hand, the service industry is booming. It's because of that. Okay, and so we become the world cities. But look at the Pearl Delta. Well, you will find that in the 1980s, Hong Kong really have a lot of influence over there. 92% of the foreign direct investment in the Guangdong, which is in fact mainly in Shenzhen and also in Dongguan area, 92%. But now in 1995, it already declined to 72%. And by 2000, when we did a study, it's 20%, 60% already, right? And also when we in year 2005, or actually it was done in year 2002. And so when we did a survey and asking about the firms, are they still using producer services? I mean, the business services in Hong Kong, you'll find that, overall speaking, only 10% of them are using Hong Kong. But these are the overall, right? For the mainland factories, they are using producer services in the PRD and other parts of China, right? But look, even looking at Hong Kong industries, these are our own firms, it's only 30%. They are still using a lot of the PRD type of development. It's very simple because I think in 20 years of time, they also have developed their own business services, right? Okay, and here is going to give you a quick summary of what has happened, right? So in year 2003, when we first do the study, you will find that producer services in the PRD is really, in Hong Kong, we have more or less 1 million people, right? But in the PRDs, they only have 0.8 million. But by year 2010, you see they already is close to us. And by 2015, well, obviously they have more people working in this area. And also you can see the Guangzhou is developing the Zhuhai new town as a new CBD is well developed now. And Zhuhai in the Hangqin area. And also Shenzhen is the Qinghai. They would like over 20 square kilometers or 14 square kilometers to be exact, much larger than the CBD in Hong Kong. And they are aspire to become the Manhattan, right, in the PRD. Okay, so you can see they are developing very fast. So and also they have their own so-called connections, right? You can see the intra firms, right? These are within the PRD area, concentrating in Guangzhou and Shenzhen. But if they are talking about the crossover, right? How do they connect it to the outside the PRD? Oh, you will find that, well, Hong Kong is small proportion. It's mainly Beijing and Shanghai, right? So you can see our importance is really declining as early as 2005. Okay. Now there are a lot of also changes in the international economy and also development of China's economy, making us the old model is really difficult to operate. Now, first of all, in 1980, when they opened, well, the GDP is very low. But now in 2015 onwards, they are already become the second largest economy in the world, right? So this is basically the trend, right? This is Hong Kong. In 1980, when they opened, you will find that our GDP in Hong Kong is more or less like 15% of China, 1.5. Wow, look at here in 2015. We still grow, but China is growing much faster. And so you can see it's only 2.8%, right? You can see the importance of Hong Kong in the economy of China in these type of changes, right? In year 2010, this is really the turning point. Right? There's already big jump, but not that. In 2013, they become the second largest economy, right? And so this is the major changes going on. Okay, and also in terms of the GDP, they are already surpassing Hong Kong already by 2005. Okay, so the total volume. But in terms of per capita, we have done some sort of work. This is the paper that we have done, the turning of the dragon head, changing role of Hong Kong and the regional development of the PRD. You can see, right, in 1980, when the first opened up in China, right, the per capita GDP is roughly around $500, and Hong Kong at that time is already something like 8,000, right? But by year 2000, when we were doing the study, you will see that already, the GDP per capita is similar to Hong Kong in 1984, something like 7,000 already, right? But at that time, Hong Kong in 2003, we have 23,000. But if this is the 23,000 US dollars. But if we do some projections, it's not difficult to find. By year 2025, they would have accomplished close to 23,000. That is already very good. I used to remember to year 2000, actually, it was still very, our glorious time in Hong Kong, right? And so by 2017, they have already increased to 18,000, right? And Hong Kong, although still increased more, obviously, right? But they have already achieved, right? But if you look at these are the figures, the update one, okay? And so you can see the PRD in 2021 is close to 19,000. It's very respectable. Guangzhou 23,000, Shenzhen 27,000. So it's a lot, right? And also in terms of the share of the GDP, in terms of the world, right? Okay, China is already a big buyer, right? Okay. Now also in terms of the economic structure over there happening, right? They are also following the general trend of the advanced economy, where the service industry is more than in the manufacturing. Obviously, in the PRD, this is about the whole of China, right? But if you look at the PRD, it's more or less similar, right? You can see the green one is the services, although they still keep a high proportion of manufacturing, but also at the same time, you will see that they're playing very fast, as I mentioned. Okay, this is Guangzhou and Shenzhen. Obviously, they are doing better than the overall PRD. Now, and also in terms of infrastructure, right? They have a lot of connectivity. We talk about this 1 hour commuting time, and later for the whole PRD, we are talking about 2 hours or 3 hours, right? So you can go anywhere in the PRD within that limit. Okay, and so another very important thing happening is that when we were having the influence over the PRD, we were basically in the Industrial Revolution 2.0. A lot of assembly line, a lot of these factories, right? But China in the PRD in the year 2000, quietly, without anybody noticing it, they're already developing Industry 3.0, basically software industry, etc. So you can see Tangshan, you can see also this Huawei, right? This is what they are doing. And now they are already been going into this Industry 4.0, right? With biotech and also with these robotics, etc. Okay, so these are all the changes that is changing. And one of the very simple way of looking at it, look at Dongguan, right? In the 1978 to the year 2004, this is really the time that we have a lot of factories in Dongguan, highly influenced by it. But by year 2010 onwards, you'll find that they no longer is relying on Hong Kong industries. More and more they are having is like something like a spillover from Shenzhen already. Is a high-tech related industries, right? So you can see this is some sort of a rise of high-tech industries in Shenzhen. I don't think I need to tell you how the industry is happening over there. Okay, and this is Dongguan is already becoming a high-tech, and this is a lot of exhibitions going on. Okay, and there are also changes in the PRD that makes these front shops, back factories models to be weakened, increasing land price and wages, and also the changes in the global market. There's a recession. China become the second largest economy, and also is emerging to be a FDI, source country itself. Okay, but there are also opportunities for the PRD. Is now the center of the world economy, moving, towards China and Asia, and also there's the high consumption in mainland China because of the rise in the per capita GDP, and also they would like to also invest outside, and also this new globalization through the One Belt, One Road initiatives. So these are the opportunities that can give to us. Okay, and I think since 2018, we are engaged with this strategic public policy or PICO, try to search a new economic cooperations between Hong Kong and the Greater Bay Area. And so what we have tried to analyze is according to the changes that is going on and what are the opportunities that we have. And basically we develop testing 4 models. One is develop Hong Kong as a center for innovation for the Greater Bay Area. This is new development, right? The other one is right on the affluent mainland Chinese. We have been doing that since the Free Visitor Scheme. Help mainland China to go global. Our financial center has already been doing that. and also enhance our traditional role of producer services. Well, I think Model 1, 2, Model 3, Model 4, we are very well aware of. And what I'm going to talk about today is Model 1. And then Model 1 is also related very much with the Northern Metropolis strategy that we've been talking about. Okay, so what next? Now, Hong Kong becoming a science and technology center in the GBA. Is it possible? Oh, okay. Well, you see the background over here. We already talked about how the whole Pearl Delta is now changing, but the Shenzhen and Dongguan are major clusters of high-tech industries. Okay, to a certain extent, some people say that this is a new Silicon Valley of China, right? Okay, and Hong Kong really have this type of innovation capabilities. We have 4 universities that are among the top 100 universities in the world, and we have state key labs, and also we have a different, type of Chinese National Engineering Research Center. So we do have the potential, right? But if you look at our commercialization, well, look at the patent applications. This is Hong Kong. We are here, right? Shenzhen and Dongguan, they are much higher than us. So you can see the commercialization is our weakest point, right? But in Shenzhen, basically, this is what they are good at. And so there is a very good synergy between the two, right? Okay. Okay, and also if you analyze the reasons why we are not doing that well, you can see that in terms of the percentage of GDP on R&D, Hong Kong is 0.8%, whereas Shenzhen, China, whatever is roughly 5%, right? And in terms of the total volume, well, it used to be because their GDP is not very high, they used to be very close to us. But with the increase in GDP, actually the gap is much larger, and so this is the reason why I think we have to catch up on that. Okay, so I think this is some of our conclusion. I don't want to bother you with it. If you are interested, I can send you our full report. Basically, we are still having the early stage of development in the Greater Bay Area in terms of high-tech development. There is still a lot of mileage to go. Okay, and there are certain policy implications. Basically, we need to let the PRD firms to know more about Hong Kong, and further enhancements of Hong Kong R&D environment, and trying to develop this type of high-tech firms in Hong Kong to go for, eventually when we come to 0 to 1 and 1 to 100, and then later the manufacturing will be done in the PRD, right? And also we need to try to set up branch offices, just like AECOM, right? in the Pearl Delta to get the business there, right? So these are the things that we are going to do. And also we need to have a really GBA business and research visa, and also counters that can be done electronically rather than now have to do it in a manual way. Although I think we are now trying to do it electronically, but somehow what I'm trying to propose is that when they even cross the border, they should have a special counter, and also they can do it in a very free way. Now Hong Kong actually is going the right directions, right? And because we understand that is the right thing to do, right? So Hong Kong actually through the ITC, the Innovation and Technology Commissions, they're doing a good job. Also the Bureau in the last few years, in 2018, that they already developed called the Indo-Health and Indo-Air, right? This is somehow is trying to go to the high-tech research, and then later we can able to work with the PRD. And obviously, one of the latest development is not only about the policy side, but also on the physical planning, which I think AIA as well as Hong Kong planners and architects, everybody is interested in, right? I think there will be more discussions about this, right? So basically, it is trying to connect it with the type of development in the PRD. For example, I totally think that this is a thing. Right way or a right direction to go to. The thing is, probably we need to have further discussion because it was just being launched and without a lot of discussion about what's going on, right? But anyway, I think the general direction is the correct one. For example, the western side, this is basically towards the Shenzhen Bay Area. We call it development circle. I think this is basically connected with the Qinghai, right? This is important. And this is this one with the Lok Ma Chau Loop, with the Hong Kong, the Innovation and Technology Park, over here and also connected with the Futian and also the Luo area. And this will be basically high-tech industries. And this side is basically for, recreation, also for tourism. I think these are quite logical in terms of development. And this northern metropolis is a really a great leap forward for Hong Kong development. I think in 1974, when we have the 10-year housing program, we have the new town development, right? That you see influence Hong Kong for the last 30 years or even 40 years, right? But now look at here, this will be a big development for Hong Kong, last for maybe 20 to 30 years. It's really a big development. Actually, this is something that I think in line with what I have been proposing in 2005. But I mean, in 2005, we talk about a plan for 2050. And so this is roughly at that time what we discussed. But why 2050? Because we talk about the 2047 is the end of the first phase of the one country, two system, and probably we can have a little bit more cooperation between the two, and there is a time. But now it seems that, well, we cannot wait. We have to really move forward. And so this is the reason why we need to have this Northern Metropolis development strategy. To a certain extent, this is a little bit like Pudong development in 1992, right? Giving Shanghai a new push, right? And so this is, I think, what we need. Okay, and so I think thank you very much. I think we can also have further discussion. So in the future, what happened is Guangzhou may be Chicago of, it may be Chicago because it's working towards the domestic market, right? And Hong Kong and Shenzhen maybe become Manhattan, right? Where it's basically international. And the whole place will become a Silicon Valley. Let's see. But there are a lot of things that we need to discuss if this is the vision for the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau, Greater Bay Area. Oh, by the way, if you are interested, there's a link over here that you can, go into, and we have developed an information net for people who would like to know more about the Greater Bay Area. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Ye. It was a wonderful presentation, giving a great overview and also the changing roles of Hong Kong from before, from 80s to now. And you're also talking about what Hong Kong's role could be in the future, and about ending with the twin city concept between Hong Kong and Shenzhen. So thank you very much. And I think we'll move on. We'll come to the Q&A later. We'll move on to the second presentation. It's my pleasure to invite Kelvin Law, who is actually Vice President of AECOM, and I've known him also for more than 20 years. And he's a registered professional planner with more than 28 years experience in undertaking and managing development consultancy projects for AECOM, a diverse range, and he's also in a managerial role for strategic development, master planning, etc., both for public and private clients. And Kevin will share some of AECOM's various projects within the GBA area. Thank you, Kevin. I want to also remind you to share a couple points about yourself that people may not know about your interests or what you're working on currently. Thank you.
Hear me? Do you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Okay. Well, first of all, thank you, Sujata. Thank you for a kind introduction. I'm a planner. I'm a planner by training, and I was actually a student of Professor Ye many years ago. I joined AECOM since 2006. I'm now leading the Hong Kong planning team, and I'm also one of the in-house GBA task force member, working on a couple of projects in the GBA areas, covering TOD, urban resilience, urban regeneration, and some sort of multidisciplinary projects as well. So I think if you're talking about the most recent works, of course, we are working on a couple of projects in Northern Metropolis, which is really challenging and interesting. And I hope it's not too late to invite Professor Ye to be our advisor. Perhaps I start my presentation.
Yes, go ahead, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I was actually talking about the title. I was giving the title Infrastructure Change on Urban Development, which I think is quite big, quite broad to be covered within 20 minutes. So what I'm trying to do is to focus on the cross-boundary connectivity and to see how the urban development or spatial development of Hong Kong is engaged in the Pearl River Delta or the Greater Bay Area. So I think Professor Ye already have given us a very full overview of the GBA in terms of the policy, in terms of our planning. And I don't think I need to repeat them, but I do want to start with a recap of some of the visions or strategic objectives of GBA. So the overarching vision is, of course, to develop a world-class city cluster that is of global competitive. And we together shall be a global leading technology and innovation hub and contribute to support the National Belt and Road initiatives. At the same time, it shall be a collective, the quality living circle, embracing the GBA core for living, working, and traveling. It should also be a demonstration platform to see how Hong Kong and Macau can collaborate with the mainland. Last but not least, of course, infrastructural connectivity is considered the basic thing to be achieved. So with different and complementary roles and positioning of the constituent cities in GBA, it is well understood that more and better infrastructure is necessary to enable the physical flow and exchange of people, goods, information, and all kinds of production factors, and to support the building of the 1 hour quality living circle. As a planner, we usually consider infrastructure as more than just providing physical connectivity, but also functioning as an agent or catalyst to articulate the spatial changes of multiple typologies and scales, which in the context of GBA, meaning to enable social and economic integration in a more cohesive circle. So with such an expanded infrastructure plus dimension, and using some of the AECOM's infrastructure and planning projects as example, I would like to share the planning strategy and emerging opportunities arising from infrastructure as being a hub, a gateway, a platform, and to see how they drive Hong Kong's transformative urban change, how we are connected with other GBA cities, and how spatial development is engaged in a wider regional context. So we are all familiar with the very first high-speed rail, the Guangzhou, Shenzhen, Hong Kong high-speed rail, which connects Hong Kong with the national and regional high-speed rail, as well as the intercity rail network. It effectively engages Hong Kong in a 1 hour living circle in the GBA core. But connectivity aside, actually high-speed rail stations are increasingly planned as not only as a third station, but a comprehensive hub with development functions to leverage on the intercity passenger flow, and at the same time, to support further agglomeration of activities with regional significance and catchment. So essentially, it is itself a development node in a network city on rail and presents as a new typology of urban space, not only for regional connection, but also business and social interactions right at the station precincts. So hub is planned to go beyond the topside development type of TOD, but through station city integration to drive regeneration or new district development, which in many cases take up the role of a city subcenter with a range of urban functions or dedicated regional positioning. So again, we are very familiar with the West Kowloon terminus. It is one of the GBA node. And apart from its topside development, the station is well planned from the outset to integrate with the surrounding urban fabric and public realm with excellent last mile pedestrian connectivity. Such station city integration would likely continue with new opportunities in the adjoining areas for physical and functional connection. For example, the West Kowloon Gateway development node identified in the ULA's district study, and the potential underground space development at Kowloon Park. We also see such station city integration planning strategy at the other hubs along the Guangzhou, Shenzhen, Hong Kong high-speed rail in GBA with strong association with Hong Kong. The latest example is the Qingsheng Station in Nansha, Hengsengjiang. Qingsheng Station is within some 35 to 40 minutes traveling distance from the West Kowloon terminus, and itself can interchange with the Guangzhou Metro Line 4 to connect to University City and Science City. Nansha is one of the 3 cooperation zones for Guangdong and Hong Kong, and there are different parcels dedicated as Guangdong Hong Kong In-Depth Cooperation Park, which are the platform intended to introduce development initiatives from Hong Kong. Qingsheng Station is situated within one of these Guangdong Hong Kong In-Depth Cooperation Park, which is referred to as the Qingsheng Hub Block. This is the direct Chinese translation. Okay. The Qingsheng Hub Block has a total area of around 6.15 square kilometers. It is based on the University Park and Community Integrated Development concept, with focus on higher education, artificial intelligence, smart transportation. The park will accommodate the Guangzhou campus of the Hong Kong UST. In the north, the Qingsheng Hub, built around the high-speed rail station in the south, a technology and innovation park in the central, and a reserve area for advanced manufacturing in the south and southeast. A key component of the park is the so-called Hong Kong-style community in the western parts, with a potential phase 2 development next to the technology and innovation park in the central area. The Hong Kong-style community has an area of around 100 hectares. So you can see the planning structure diagram and the land use plan, which is gazetted earlier this year. One of the features of the Hong Kong-style community is that its master planning has taken into account the prevailing planning principles and urban design standards in Hong Kong as reference, so as to create a familiar living and working environment for the Hong Kong people. It will be linked up physically and functionally to the Hong Kong UST to its north, and the Qingsheng high-speed rail hub to its south. And we all know that education is a key consideration for people to move in. So there will be a school for the Hong Kong children within the planning area, which is called in Chinese, 港人子弟學校. And other supporting social facilities and public realm are also introduced. So the northern part of the Hong Kong style community is primarily designated as a knowledge integrated community, while the southern part as the headquarters gateway community. Both together is expected to provide the whole life cycle industry space for startups to mature enterprises. So the station city integration is now a very common planning strategy in other GBA cities for new districts or area regeneration. One such example is Xili Hub, Sailai Xulau in Shenzhen. It is one of the 3 primary comprehensive transportation hubs in Shenzhen. The other 2 are Shenzhen North and Shenzhen Station. So Xili will be a very important interchange for high-speed rail and intercity rail connecting to cities outside and within GBA. It is also connected to the Shenzhen Bay boundary control point through Metro Line 13, which in fact links up many key development parcels in Nansha district. So we are familiar with Nanshan. This is actually the technology, you may say technology hub of Shenzhen or even the whole country. So the Metro Line will link up all these major development parcels in the Nanshan district along its very prominent north-south technology and innovation axis. And this emerging development axis has actually the potential to synergize with the development in that part of the northern metropolis in Hong Kong, and together with the Qinghai, Shenzhen, Hong Kong Modern Surface Industry Cooperation Zone. They would together in turn point to the need for further enhancement in connectivity with Hong Kong. So let's turn to the infrastructure as a gateway. So Hong Kong's position as an international aviation hub is affirmed in the National 40th Five-Year Plan, as well as the GBA Outline Development Plan. In GBA context, the Hong Kong International Airport serves as a gateway, actually, to connect GBA with the world for not only passenger, but cargo as well. The 3RS, the third runway system, embedded in its 2030 master plan, the Hong Kong, Macau, Zhuhai Bridge, and the Tuen Mun Chai Lap Kok Link, all contribute holistically to enhance its handling capacity as well as the regional catchment. So with the airport expansion, actually new planning opportunities arise, particularly with the changing vision from city airport to airport city. New economic uses like Sky City and the giant logistics center in the southern part of the airport are planted on the airport island for more round-the-clock flight movement and GBA-oriented workspace. And at the same time, to leverage on the increasing volume of passengers visiting the airport for traveling as well as a destination. So benefiting from the opening of the Tuen Mun Chai Lap Kok Link, there are further opportunities in the new territories west for more cross-boundary modern logistic operation, and the enhanced employment uses would certainly help sustain the population growth in that part of Hong Kong with better home job balance. It is even more interesting to see the spatial reach of the airport city would in fact go beyond Hong Kong with the expansion of the Hong Kong International Airport's logistic facilities in GBA. So already as the #1 cargo airport in the world, there is an initiative to develop a logistic park in Dongguan involving sea-air intermodal connections for goods. So basically it involved the establishment of a bonded logistic park in Dongguan and an airside intermodal cargo handling facility at the restricted area of the airports. And the custom clearance, security screening, cargo acceptance, etc., are all to be completed in Dongguan, as if at the Hong Kong International Airport for both mainland export and import. Goods are transported by sea to and from the airside in Hong Kong for direct air transshipment to and from international destinations. So sorry that the project is still undergoing and no plans for the logistic park can be shown, but based on the strategic planning document of the Dongguan government, we can see that the project would actually enhance the global accessibility and growth of the cargo in Dongguan, as well as the whole GBA, while it helps strengthen and consolidate Hong Kong International Airport's the leading position as a global cargo hub. It also brings along the opportunities to Dongguan to develop integrated and modern logistic services, which would enhance its trade and support the development of the Binhaiwan New District and Dongguan ports. It's far more than an offshore cargo terminal facility. From a GBA perspective, it is truly a Dongguan Hong Kong collaboration project on trade and logistics. In terms of gateway, it is also worth mentioning about the changing function of the ports, or from the Hong Kong side, we call it the boundary control points. There are altogether 7 land-based boundary crossing between Hong Kong and Shenzhen. And under the East in, East out, and West in, West out strategy, the functions of all these land-based ports are rationalized and transformed. In short, surface or economic nodes with different positioning are planned to be developed to integrate with the upgraded port at Guangdong, Luohu, and Wenjingdu, to such an extent that a development initiative called Shenzhen Hong Kong Ports Economic Belt is proposed for the port areas on the Shenzhen side. The new Guangdong port, we understand is already under construction and will be commissioned in 2024. The changes are to leverage on the enhanced accessibility, strong cross-boundary passenger flow and to drive local regeneration. Similar planning strategy has also been adopted in the border gate area between Macau and Qinghai. It has been a very, I would say, a very unique experience involving in the planning of some of these boundary crossing areas. So the last one I want to talk about is the Northern Metropolis. I know there will be another section in June for Shenzhen and Hong Kong specifically, so I will not go into details, but just kind of setting out the scene. So echoing with Professor Ye, actually the Northern Metropolis is essentially the latest response of Hong Kong to the connection and integration with GBA based on the so-called two cities, three circles cross-boundary spatial framework. There is an unprecedented scale of connectivity proposals, including co-location arrangement for boundary crossing points, new cross-boundary rail link or extension, and the corresponding arrangements on Hong Kong side with respect to the East in East South, West in West South strategy, which I mentioned about in the previous slide. Of course, there are also development of new town or new development area. So Northern Metropolis is indeed a comprehensive platform for connection with Shenzhen in economic, social, and physical terms, leveraging on the synergy and enabling the coordinated spatial planning while developing itself as a growth engine to drive Hong Kong as well as GBA development. Two of the three major parcels within the Northern Metropolis, namely the Shantin Long Ma Jiao Development Node and the NTN or the New Territories North New Town together with the Luohu Mancamdo Development Node are currently being studied. So please expect more to come in the next section, in June. And perhaps that's all for my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelvin. You've explored a great topic on cross-boundary connections, as well as focused on the high-speed rail and also the hubs that can be that are being created between the station areas and the high-speed rail and other transit corridors, and also some of the using infrastructure as a gateway to create more hubs, and shared some of the projects, including the boundary ports as well as the Northern Metropolis, and even to how to enhance the connectivity between Hong Kong and the GBA. Thank you for that, and I think we will now move to the third presentation of the day to Oren Thatcher, whom also I've actually worked with together, and he is the principal of OTC Limited, a planning and design firm. And Oren used to work before with SOM as their urban design head in Shanghai, but he also worked in New York and other places, Hong Kong as well. And he's now working on many projects related to regional airport connectivity all over the world. So Oren is equally busy. And I think today his topic will be on regional and airport connectivity within Greater Bay Area. And Oren, don't forget to share a couple insights of of yourself that people may not know, either what you're interested in, passionate about, or what you're working on currently. Thank you, Oren.
Thank you, Sujata, for the introduction. And I will try to say a couple of things that people may not know about me. One is that in spite of my Zoom background, I'm not in Hong Kong at the moment, so I apologize for those who didn't know. Not that it matters, but unfortunately for family reasons, I had to travel, and I hope to be back soon. The other thing that people don't know about me is that I was not a student of Professor Ye, so that's probably a detail that I'm sure a lot of people listening in are interested in. So with that little, I hope that Sujata addresses the request. And let me now share the. Tell me if you see the presentation screen.
Yeah. Yes, okay. Can see.
Great. So I think that in a way it's a good thing that I'm third, in the sense that it's kind of I think Professor Ye gave kind of a good kind of overview of the economic background to the GBA and opportunities for regional collaboration. I think Kelvin moved pretty close to the more specific area that I'm going to be talking about infrastructure. Again, kind of with I would say more of a global view. And I want to, I'm going to touch on some global issues related to infrastructure, specifically transportation infrastructure, which is my expertise. And by the way, I'm not going to talk only or even primarily about airport connectivity, even though I will get to that as one of the topics. But maybe the thing that sets apart what I am interested in and what I will be talking about to some degree is that I'm very much into specifics. So there is a point at which the, we can talk about great kind of economic parameters of different areas in the GBA. We can talk about even kind of these sorts of diagrams that I think both the previous speakers put forward of the Northern Metropolis, and the big circles and the arrows and the principles of connecting different areas and so on. But I'm actually very much more interested in the specifics of how this then plays out in urban space, which is not the focus of my discussion, but I would touch on it a little bit because I think that also touches on the other theme of this particular session, which is the thing called placemaking, which I'm not an expert in or going to be talking about. But when we talk about infrastructure, how it touches the city, it creates a place, and I think it's important to discuss that. There's specificity to it that I want to touch on. And the other is that, again, we can put through diagrams and principles, and they're all important, but in the end, the proof is in the pudding, as they say. And so when we look at connectivity, this is a very high level diagram of some key connectivity elements in the PRD or GBA, focusing on really kind of the intercity rail connections, ferry connections, and airports. These are kind of the main elements. So I'm, for me to say things like I think, what was the term, the 1 hour 1 hour living circle, I think we really need to look at exactly what that means, because life doesn't start at the station or at an airport or at the ferry terminal. Life is, there's a whole urban or suburban areas, and how they connect to those networks is important, because that's really about how the average person in the GBA will be able to reach other places, rather than just saying how these hubs connect to each other. So just to kind of moving on, if we look just more closely at just, let's say, the connection between Hong Kong and Shenzhen, which is of course critical to Hong Kong. And by the way, I forgot to mention the title of my presentation is, the subtitle is From a Hong Kong Perspective. The previous two speakers also had a Hong Kong perspective, but I do want to say that there are certain elements that are unique to Hong Kong, and I think need to be understood in that way. And I'll get to it maybe more towards the end of my talk. So looking from the perspective of Hong Kong at the immediate connection, which is to the north, to Shenzhen, it's really important to notice a couple of things. First of all, if you just overlay the networks of urban rail and then the kind of intercity rail, you immediately are struck by the differences and the way those two are. There's a major discontinuity at the boundary between Hong Kong and Shenzhen, and that needs to be understood. In fact, there are only, at the moment, there are only 4 points of interface between rail between the two cities, which are the two cross-boundary rail stations in Hong Kong, the old one in Hong Kong, which still operates, and of course West Kowloon with a high-speed rail. And then we have Lo Wu and Nok Ma Chau, which are the points at which you cross over to Shenzhen and then join the system there. These are the only actual practical boundary crossing points today. So I'm saying it because when we look at kind of big circles that show kind of cross-boundary integration, we do have to remember that at least for the time being, these are two different regions in China, which are separated through a boundary. And so when we talk about the integration, especially transportation integration, there is a thing that needs to be overcome when you want to go from one to the other. So when you limit your crossing points to those few places where you have, whether it's co-location or just, you know, the boundary facilities of one side or the other, these are significant bottlenecks to free movement. And we just need to remember that and discuss it maybe a bit more openly. And I'll get a bit more to that later. So again, this is a bit of a schematic of the same two systems and how they interface. I'll get to more. And at the moment, at least, cross-boundary rail extension, and I'm focusing on rail right now because I think that's in a way the most important and kind of the backbone of regional mobility, does not really go far into like true integration of the two rail systems, let's say of Hong Kong and Shenzhen. And whether that's even feasible technically, I think that's something that in the years and maybe decades to come, a lot of people have to spend time talking about, because just getting out of one system and transferring to the other is not good enough when you talk about true metropolitan integration. And right now, in that sense, the connectivity is limited. These are now. It needs to be said that cross-boundary rail was discussed, has been in discussion for a long time. Professor Ye mentioned that the whole idea, of course, of PRD and then GBA integration is hardly new. The Railway Development Strategy from 2000 identified at least one cross-boundary rail connection, which was seen as a long-term connected to Shenzhen. That was never quite materialized. Importantly, the 2014 Railway Development Strategy identified a very important link, which I will again get to in a bit, which talked about the West Express Rail, which is going to be, at that point already the express rail or the high-speed rail link to West Kowloon was already being planned. But this was going to be the second line that was maybe high speed or maybe just kind of relatively high speed connection. Then importantly was going to connect the two airports, Hong Kong and Shenzhen Airport. This scheme was in fact dropped in the review of the 2014 RDS for reasons which I will not get into, mostly to do with economic reasons and the viability of the airport to airport link, which again, there's a lot to be said about, which I won't do at this point. But it just bears remembering that the only cross-boundary actual rail link that's part of the current MTR and government planning strategy is a safeguard in the middle of the Tung Chung East reclamation for future strategic, it's called the strategic rail corridor. That's kind of the only thing that's left of the West Rail WAL, the Western Express Link, except for, I'm sorry, I have to say, there's also a safeguard in the Hong Kong BCF Island for potential station. So with that in mind, that's kind of my little bit of an overview of where we stand in terms of rail connectivity to the rest of the GBA, which again is a bit high level, but unsatisfactory, I think, in some ways. With that, I'm going to take you on a little bit of a detour, kind of taking the whole idea of connectivity and GBA to the eye level and telling you about the trip that myself and my team conducted. I said, I think in the promo material, I said just before the pandemic, it was actually, I was mistaken. It was the end of 2018, not the end of 2019, but it was still, arguably it was a much more optimistic area, which I hope to come back to. So our trip started at the high-speed rail station in Kowloon. This is us approaching it from the MTR station, from Kowloon station to the connecting bridge. I think it bears mentioning that, again, the stuff that I want to look at, which is how that infrastructure interfaces with the city. West Kowloon as an underground station, at least on paper, is ideally located or configured to integrate with urban space. And it remains to be seen how it all fits and how it all works when the entire West Kowloon Cultural District is complete, but they're promising signs. I have to say, less promising are the connections to the rest of Hong Kong via public transport, but that's a topic maybe for the follow-up panel discussion. Inside, the station is impressive. Again, I'm sorry if I'm going to say a few critical comments throughout my presentation about various facilities that we encountered. I hope no one takes them too, no one in the audience takes them too personally, but I found that there is maybe some areas, this is so, as you go down, you go through the co-located immigration facilities. This is one that enters into China, and then you're in the bonded area where you're already kind of technically in mainland territory. And there's just a sense that the distribution of space between the restricted area and the unrestricted area, the queuing space, the waiting areas, are not necessarily as well balanced as they could be, but it is a very impressive gateway to the high-speed network in China. And so we boarded the train and proceeded to Shenzhen, boarded the platform, and then we alighted in Futian Station in Shenzhen, which is another underground station, has to be said, the only underground station in mainland China on the high-speed rail. Of course, I'm talking about the high-speed rail network, which in fact allows it to be, again, urbanistically speaking, a very successfully integrated station in urban space. And again, I think as such, it's a great model. And with a kind of, so those two beginning points with West Kowloon terminus and the Futian station, it was a very nice kind of way of encountering how train stations could be part of an urban environment, and indeed serve as the hubs for TOD or any kind of development around them, which is accessible, by pedestrians, bikes, and of course an extensive network of public transportation, of which we availed ourselves. In fact, we took the Shenzhen Metro Line 11 to visit our next facility, which was the Terminal 3, new Terminal 3 in Shenzhen Airport. En route, we encountered something that, again, bears remembering when we talk about transportation infrastructure, which is in the mainland. You still have to screen, you have to go through security screening when you enter the metro, which is something, of course, which is not done in Hong Kong. Bears remembering when we talk about integration. How does that kind of, again, the specifics, how does that work when if we wanted to have further integration of, let's say, the MTR with the Shenzhen Metro. Terminal 3, I won't get into it, very impressive looking. I will just draw the attention, there's quite a few things that were clearly inspired by Hong Kong Airport's own Terminal 1. And otherwise, it's an impressive airport, impressive terminal. It has a fairly interesting ground transportation center, which has a lot of intermodal integration, which is something that we were also very interested in. So it wasn't just an airport terminal, it was a lot of intermodal integration that we were looking at. And that was, again, a very successful visit of transportation in GBA. From there, we hopped in a DD, and which is also transportation infrastructure in a way, and proceeded to visit the Shekou Cruise Center, which again is sort of at street level. That area is a bit, I'm sure everybody or most people are familiar with it. It's kind of an interesting area. Part of it is from an urban design point of view, but the terminal itself was a bit, I would say, weird, not very user friendly, we found, but of course it provides the access point to the ferries that go to Hong Kong and Macau. As such, it's an important piece in that kind of GBA connectivity network. And importantly, this is again the thing I will come to in the end. It's one of the feeds into Hong Kong Airport through this connection, Hong Kong International Airport, that has a remote check-in facility in Shekou. You check in here, and then your bag is dropped. You can see the airlines are located, and then you connect with the ferry directly to Hong Kong Airport, the feature I will come to in the end. From there, we took a car. Again, it was another DD. We went directly to another airport, which is Guangzhou Baiyun International Airport. We went to see the new Terminal 2. Again, very impressive, very large, very spacious, and very much modeled after Hong Kong Airport. I'm focusing on these kind of signs, but there's a certain DNA that I think is a sign a little bit kind of Hong Kong Airport having set the tone for a lot of the infrastructure facilities that you see in the GBA, even if by now many of them are bigger than what we have in Hong Kong, more extensive, and I don't want to say eclipsing Hong Kong, but certainly in scale they are. And in that sense, Hong Kong, I think, can be proud, having inspired, and this again, Hong Kong Airport specifically, having inspired the great new airport terminals elsewhere in the GBA. From Guangzhou Airport, we took the Guangzhou Metro, and then we spent the night in Guangzhou. I won't get into it. This is just a kind of a snap of the mobility elements in Guangzhou, there are many interesting ones, including, of course, extensive network of bike lanes and the BRT. Again, things that we were very interested in. The next day, we went to Guangzhou South Station, which is a high-speed rail station. I think this is where I have to say, you can't not have mixed feelings about those really large high-speed rail stations in China, they're huge, really, really huge, and impressively busy, and obviously are essential to the kind of the success, economic success and social integration of many different parts of China, but they're also urbanistically very problematic because they're built like airports. You can see the elevated roads. Essentially the urban feature. It's not by chance that stations like Guangzhou South are completely isolated from the rest of the city, because you just can't build stations this big and these kind of complicated in the city center. And that's again one reason why Futian and Hong Kong West Kowloon terminus are so unique, because they're underground and in that sense really well integrated. So again, huge, complex. I'm afraid to say in some cases, some areas, there are some weak links and overcrowding in certain areas, which is impressive, but also a bit disturbing. And it's a pattern I've seen all around China, that for all of their big size, many of those big train stations are already at capacity or over capacity. And then some areas are quite empty, notably the arrivals area. So again, when you look at these impressive infrastructure nodes, there are some specifics that need bearing. And if we are going to think about it, and as professionals talk about how we work with infrastructure in mainland China, how we learn from it, how we maybe provide some insights, these are some insights that we bring to this from the perspective of Hong Kong professionals who do transportation globally. From there, we took the train to Qinghai. Qinghai Station is much more kind of a slightly older generation, not as big and impressive, functional enough. Again, because it's small enough, it's reasonably well integrated in the city with a station plaza, integrated and kind of street level intermodal connectivity. From there, we took the bus to the Zhuhai port, which is integrated with a Macau port, which is the end of the Zhuhai-Macau bridge. Impressive facility, quite large. Here again, I'll get to it, the Hong Kong International Airport check-in area, with not really in operation yet. The border crossing inspection, and then we, of course, got on the bus, crossed the bridge, and came back to Hong Kong on this circular tour, 2 days, and countless really transportation elements, ending with the absolutely gorgeous Hong Kong boundary crossing facility designed by the RSHP, the Rogers Partnership in London, collaborating with ADAS in Hong Kong. I should have given ADAS credit for the West Kowloon terminus as well. Beautiful building that those who haven't seen, I highly recommend seeing. Unfortunately, compromised in some places by the way it's operated, but otherwise fantastic way and a great gateway into Hong Kong Airport. So I'm going to end with my own kind of history of the kind of PRD or GBA intermodal connectivity, mostly between Hong Kong Airport and the rest of the region, through the facility called now the Intermodal Transfer Terminal at Hong Kong International Airport, which is under construction and set to open in the next year. So As an introduction to it, if you look at the GBA, these are the different areas inside the GBA, but it's really important to understand and to remember, and that's going back to my first theme, that there are three what we call CIQ zones. CIQ is Customs Immigration Quarantine. So it's funny, quarantine a few years ago was not even the word that anybody understood. Now we all understand it all too well what it means. But these, obviously, we're talking about Hong Kong. We need to consider Macau and the mainland as three separate CIQ zones. And that really is a very, very important ingredient in the ITT that I will describe to you now, as well as a theme in some of those transportation infrastructure elements I discussed earlier. So back in the day, Hong Kong Airport, these were the kind of PRD ferry links in the early 2000s. And there was, if you wanted to get to Hong Kong Airport, you had to take kind of go to Hong Kong Island or Kowloon and then take the Airport Express, let's say, or a bus to go to Hong Kong Airport. Hong Kong Airport realized the opportunity to actually have a direct feed using ferries into Hong Kong Airport through the facility called Sky Pier, which was launched in the early 2000s, and I had the honor of designing the permanent facility for, which I will show you in a minute. So Sky Pier basically said, let's bring people from the PRD, from Macau, and the Western, mostly the Western PRD, but really as far as Guangzhou, directly into the airport, bring them on a ferry, keep them in a bonded environment, meaning they don't enter the CIQ zone of Hong Kong. And then, so this is, I won't get into it, this is a kind of showing all the processing facilities that you would otherwise have to go to back in the early 2000s, getting into Hong Kong, going through customs inspection, immigration, getting out, taking the train, going back. And Sky Pier basically said, let's eliminate all of that, skip everything and go directly into the airport without any immigration, customs inspection, essentially go directly from the departure terminal in the mainland or Macau into airport security and then onto the gate. The airport in the same way, of course, in the opposite direction. The airport authority, and just in case those of you have never even heard of the facility, Cathay Pacific actually started selling tickets. This is later, but directly, let's say in this case, from New York to Macau. So you can buy a ticket, an airline ticket, that connects you to Macau as if it was a connecting flight. That's how seamless the idea was of the connection using Sky Pier. The early facility was a bit primitive and simplistic. You can see very primitive baggage handling, very basic facilities, but then the Airport Authority decided to invest in a permanent facility, for which the Airport Authority extended the APM system, the people mover system that existed between T1 and T2, and of course extendable to the rest of T1. And then what we designed at the time, and this is during still my days with SOM, is this facility called Sky Pier, which was designed to be expanded in the future and provided seamless connection between the ferries on the side, which you see on the right side, going through the terminal, being processed, and then connecting to the underground APM and going directly to the gates of Hong Kong Airport. This facility, then again, was designed in a modular fashion, designed to grow. And then it was part of the original Sky City master plan, which obviously changed in recent years, but there was a whole vision. And then it opened in 2009. These are the pontoons. By the way, this one, this is a facility, this is the AIA. We submitted this, I was a design architect as well as a planner on this project, and we submitted it for an AIA award, which we did not win. So it's an opportunity for me to share it with AIA for the first time. Most people in Hong Kong will never see this facility because you can't go in. This is only a transfer facility, which you have to come from the mainland or Macau, connecting to Hong Kong Airport. You cannot go there from Hong Kong, even though there was an idea to allow that to happen. This is what it looked like before all the reclamation around it. Quite a beautifully done, the airline check-in facilities on a busy day. And then you take the escalators down to the APM and go directly to the airport. It was a very, I think, very successful facility already when it opened, and quite busy. There was an idea even of putting, clicking through some, there was an idea of adding a landing ferry terminal in Hong Kong Airport. We designed all the facilities for that. That never happened. So that would have allowed people from Hong Kong to actually take the ferries to the PRD. And then we looked even at using it for cruise operations. That's before Kai Tak was launched. That was around 2007, 2008. And that's, anyway, that's what it looked like in 2010 with a beautiful golf course. And then, of course, everything changed. What changed? It was decided to build the Zhuhai Macau Airport, Macau Bridge. And then with that, and then the Hong Kong Airport announced the third runway expansion. So suddenly everything became much bigger, much more interesting. And the ITT, which I'll just very quickly walk you through, is a facility that leverages what was built and provided in Sky Pier to include coaches arriving via the Zhuhai Macau Bridge and going directly to Hong Kong International Airport. So again, it's the same principle of providing a direct bonded connection to Hong Kong Airport by ferries, instead extending it to coaches as well. By the way, it's an idea that was, in the very early days, we were involved in a study that looked actually at moving Sky Pier to the new Hong Kong BCF and creating an integrated facility there that would have in fact included also bonded logistics. That's the point that Kelvin was making about now this happening in Dongguan, but there was an idea that we developed for Hong Kong Airport to provide an integrated facility in the BCF that would include not just passenger, but also freight operations with direct bonded feed into Hong Kong Airport. Also included the West Express Rail. All these ideas we already developed in 2008. They were abandoned in favor of the much simpler facility that was ultimately built, still looking at different ways of integrating the West Express Rail, which I won't get into. Very quickly, just to explain the transfer terminal. Again, the streamlining of all the processing facilities, which I will not get into, but again, to give you the sense of how it all fits with Hong Kong Airport and the facilities. That was at the time before the third runway expansion of Terminal 2, but you can see the idea of a kind of how this kind of coach facility works with the ITT, so with Sky Pier, and uses the same APM infrastructure to connect into Hong Kong Airport, including the third runway concourse. The facility that ended up being designed, we did the planning. ADAS again did the architecture, but as an extension of the architectural expression of the original Sky Pier. AECOM, by the way, was the lead consultant on the project. The idea is to provide these coach facilities at the deck level, a coach drop-off and pickup. There you go downstairs to an expanded check-in area, security screening, which also where you merge with the flows coming from the ferries. So this facility is truly intermodal. You have people coming by coach and by ferry from all over the PRD, remaining in a bonded environment, then going directly into the airport security screening and to the airport APM that takes them directly to the gate. And you see that kind of in the stacking model, how that works, connecting. These coaches are coming directly from the Zhuhai Macau Bridge, and then the passengers connect directly to the terminal. There's baggage claim. In essence, it's an airport terminal that interfaces exclusively with PRD people coming in and out of Hong Kong.
Oren, maybe a little bit more, you need to wrap up maybe. Thank you.
Yeah, I know. I'm just, this is it. This is the end. Sorry about that. It's the, this is just kind of an animation showing the experience. You can see the coaches coming in, the ferries there, and then you will see the passenger experience of people coming into the terminal and then entering directly into Hong Kong Airport. It's another 30 seconds or so. So as this is running through, I will just close by saying that this facility is really an example of what I consider to be a true node of GBA infrastructure, mobility, transportation integration. We paid great attention to the way it works at eye level, the convenience of passengers and so on. But of course, it's a node that feeds into the airport. It's not urban in that sense, even though it's in the heart of Sky City, which is a development outside of Hong Kong Airport, the commercial development. But Sky City has no direct access to this facility. So this, in a way, captures the paradox of PRD or GBA integration, which is even when the infrastructure works very well, because of the CIQ separation of the different parts of the PRD or the GBA, which is mainland Macau and Hong Kong, the logic of urban integration and urban infrastructure is not the same as what we're used to in, sorry, I'll pause this and just bring this to the end. So it's not the same as what you have in normal urban development. Again, I'll wrap up here. Sorry if I took a bit too much time, and thank you all for listening.
Thank you. You had 3 presentations wrapped up in one, Oren, but I really enjoyed, especially the study trip, because most people want to go to China, they can't go. So you almost felt like you actually visited the places along with you. It was good, and you covered not only rail, but also, there was a question from the audience about ferries. You actually covered rail, airport, as well as ferry, and so enjoyed. Thank you for that. And I think that since we're running short of time, I would quickly ask Philip Wong, next, our last speaker, but not the least. He's going to be talking about enhancing connectivity through infrastructure. And Philip Wong is the Macau office leader and Greater Bay Area Task Force leader for ARUP. Philip is experienced in managing large-scale multidisciplinary infrastructure projects throughout the region, including Macau and its adjacent markets. He has more than 25 years of experience with ARUP, working on rail, highway, and a lot of infrastructure projects. And his recent experience is the Hong Kong Qinghai Macau Bridge and other master plans in Macau as well. Philip, don't forget to mention a couple things that people may not know about you or what you're interested in, and start your presentation, please. Sorry about having to cram your time a little bit. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sujata. Can you all hear me? Suppose yes, right? Good.
Yes.
Yeah, first thing is, I'm not a student of Professor Yan, basically, unlike others. So I'm with an engineering background. So basically, I work with ARUP since '97. Starting as a graduate in civil geotechnical engineering. So, I'm in the hope that, I could give you guys a little bit more insights about, connectivity by infrastructures in the GBA, from an engineering perspective, rather than planning. Okay, so I guess it's quite late now, so I better, go fast. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, thank you.
All right, okay. Okay, so I'd like to share with you my insight about enhancing connectivity by infrastructure's development in the Greater Bay Area. So just bit touch on our in Greater Bay Area. So we have about 2,400 staff across the four main cities in the Greater Bay Area. So namely Hong Kong, Macau, Shenzhen, and Guangzhou. So and we have been able to deliver some of the most challenging infrastructures related projects since the mid 70s, I think. So in the remaining sections, I will pick up some of the past experience as illustrative examples to showcase how infrastructure development in the region influenced the growth of the cities, aligning with the national strategy to further deepen the cooperation amongst Guangdong, Hong Kong, and Macau. So a survey, done by KPMG and Hong Kong General Chamber of Commerce back in 2017 about the key drivers of success in the Greater Bay Area. It reflects that the top 3 sector respondents that are likely, to benefit most from the Greater Bay Area, being trade and financial service, logistics, and R&D in technology and innovations. So although it's not shown here, in fact, professional service indeed came forth in the ranking. So on another note, the 3 most important factors For the GBA success, support from the governments, consistency of laws and regulations, and also infrastructure support. So having the right hardware will be vital. And despite much of the rail, rail, shipping, aviation infrastructures are already in place, so there will still be many more infrastructures to be built, to further strengthen the region's logistic infrastructure positions. As a Hong Kong-based practitioner with working with a global company, I would firstly talk about how we could leverage the successful experience in Hong Kong and Macau, to impact the GBA in a positive way. So the industry have really put together a long list of successful infrastructure delivery in Hong Kong in the past decades. So although a lot of the works have been associated with a very lengthy development timeline, possibly because of statutory requirements and procedures, contractual, procurement and public sentiment, etc. Infrastructures in Hong Kong are still widely, equate with the highest quality, and I'm sure many of you would consider we have established a very good and very efficient public transportation network here. So there are some illustrations here, such as Hong Kong Qinghai Macau Bridge, which I will come up with I'll come up to in the next sections, and Stonecutter Bridge, spanning the Rambert Channel, connecting Rex Kowloon to Qinghai, which had the second longest cable stay span in the world at the time of its completion in 2009. And on the railway side, we have opened various new lines, such as Island Line West Extension, South Island Line East Kwun Tong Line Extension, and also Express Rail Link, and also the phase 1 of Sa Tin to Central Link in the past 5 to 10 years, I think. And also the harbor area treatment scheme on the right is an essential one that it actually was implemented in stages to combat water pollution caused by urban development near the Victoria Harbour. And by commissioning, it's actually remarkably improved, the water quality around the Victoria Harbour and Hong Kong waters. And I think the Hong Kong economy was actually facing enormous challenges in 2019, 2020, just 2-3 years ago, with the street protests and also outbreak of the coronavirus. As its historic tendency to promulgate infrastructure development usually in the economic downtime, the government have now launched many major infrastructure works since then that will further modernize the mobility of the city. So I think in summary, the Hong Kong SAR government, they have confirmed their plans to invest about more than Hong Kong $1 trillion in infrastructures over the next decade, and it is expected the construction industry will be benefiting quite a lot. So in Macau, the government, they have kept quite a good momentum in implementing their development plan, in spite of serious impact brought by COVID. In the recent policy address in 2022, they have put focus on implementing the urban master plan 2020 to 2040, which was recently approved and gazette. The master plan actually includes the formulation of a sustainable development framework using the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals (SDG), and also integrated master plan. Conduct public consultations. Draw a roadmap for the development and also the implementation strategies. It also aims to optimize, development potentials while also simultaneously addressing the concerns and aspiration of the local populations regarding land use, transportation, environment, the infrastructure resilience, and also social enhancement. And not surprisingly, a lot of the coverage in the policy address was also focused on the GBA integration. So how can Macau be synergized to cope with the opportunities in the GBA and with the and also with the governance of the Hengqin now jointly under Macau? So the short to medium term strategy that Macau shall implement to support its business diversifications, and also to reduce the reliance on the gaming industry. And at the moment, the largest infrastructure projects in Macau is this called the Macau Fourth Crossing, which is essentially the fourth sea crossing between Macau Peninsula and Taipa. On the eastern side of the water. So it is a 3.5 kilometer long, crossing with dual 6-lane carriageway and also 2-lane of so-called prioritized motorcycle lanes with the main span of about 280 meter thing. The project was procured, through international tendering in design and build mode, and at that time, that has actually attracted a lot of the Chinese biggest state-owned enterprise contracted to participate in the bidding, and the project is due to complete in 2024. A lot of other speakers have talked about the cross boundary transport infrastructures. And I think, one key data about that is before COVID, it's actually over 236 millions of passenger trips, using land crossing between Hong Kong and mainland was recorded in 2019, with a daily average of over 640,000 passenger trips, which is quite a lot. The 32-kilometer long Hong Kong sections of the express rail link, Kelvin has briefly touched on that. From engineering point of view, is actually very challenging. I think AECOM is mostly doing the stations, and Arabs doing bit of the tunnel works. I think this project is strategic importance as it basically connects over 30,000 kilometers of national high-speed rail network, and also it provides direct train service to 58 mainland cities, and it greatly shortens a lot of traveling times between Hong Kong, Shenzhen, Guangzhou, and other cities. So, for instance, if you take a train from West Kowloon to Shenzhen Futan, it only takes you 40 minutes. The Hong Kong-Zhuhai Macau Bridge, has been in operation since October 2018, and I was quite fortunate to be involved in a lot of different consultancies for this projects across in Hong Kong, Zhuhai, the main sections, and also Macau sections. The three cities, Hong Kong, Zhuhai, and Macau, they are geographically quite close, but they are basically separated by waters. So with the bridge in place, the traveling time actually have improved a lot. So if you travel to Zhuhai now, in the past it might take you something like 4 hours, but now on the road it takes you maybe slightly more than 1 hour, which is quite impressive. And indeed, the projects, is quite a challenging one, and also it set up a lot of records. It is a sea crossing tunnel projects with a total length of about 55 kilometers long. So it's the longest so-called bridge plus tunnel sea crossing in the world. The bridge tunnel system consists of 3 cable-stayed bridges, an undersea tunnel, and 4 artificial islands. And the bridge was decided, to last for 120 years. And of course, technically, is very challenging. That pushed the engineering boundaries while remaining environmentally cautious. And the designers and contractors, they were dedicated to resolve many issues, during during constructions, and also design stages, such as they have to, all the designers have to overcome the competency and also the consistencies of different standards across the three regions. And also over the design construction stage, they need to, especially construction stage, they need to overcome the severe climate conditions, and also ways to protect wildlife such as Chinese white dolphins. And also there have been many innovations adopted in the Hong Kong Qinghai Macau Bridge project. For example, in the Hong Kong boundary crossing facilities, we adopt the so-called large diameter circular steel cell as the seawall cover them together with stone columns, and that has actually minimized a lot of marine sediment dredgings, which could pollute the waters. And in Macau, there's an ongoing project called the Macau Light Rail Transit Hengqin Extension Line. So it's a 2.2 kilometer long light rail transit comprised of a little sections of viaducts and a subsea tunnel underneath the waterway, and two stations. One on the Macau side, close to the old Lotus border, and the other one is on the Hengqin border side. So the project will bring Macau light rail system to Hengqin and link it with the intercity rail, while the Hengqin border, which was we arranged to be a joint co-location border checkpoint, which was opened in 2020. The Macau on this project, the Macau government adopted direct negotiation procurement with a state-owned enterprise, and it's not uncommon in this sort of cross-border projects, which was approved by central government. So when we look into bringing our expertise to the Greater Bay Area, I think the key should be how we bring along the international good practice, and also combine engineering, no carbon innovations to promote smart design, construction, and implementations. A Qinghai infrastructure consulting service was commissioned about 10 years ago, following the approval of the overall development plan for the so-called Shenzhen Hong Kong Modern Service Industry Cooperative Zone in Qinghai. So this consultancy was strategized to deliver, short, medium, and long-term implementation roadmap for this 15 square kilometer land of Qinghai, including the provisions of development timeline, technical advisory, and site development consulting service, such as the land use, infrastructure plannings for highways, rails, underground space, and also provisions of utilities for different development zones. And actually the strategic master development plan for Qinghai was approved in 2015. And since the local government, they would like to visualize the outcome and impact of the plan earlier. They have essentially selected a few pilot zones where much more resources were allocated to prioritize their development need. So the scope of this follow-up consulting works focus on design management and construction administrations for various land lots, providing the standardized design guidelines, and ensuring that the infrastructures and interface were well coordinated under different development programs. The Tencent Dachan Bay development in Shenzhen, this one is still ongoing. The planned so-called futuristic development will house Tencent's headquarters, also its upstream and downstream enterprise, and other mixed-use developments, such as they have offices, they have hotels, convention, exhibition, etc. So apart from buildings, there will be many more infrastructures to be developed, such as a lot of grade and slip roads, link bridges, underpasses, combined surface tunnel, drainage, sewage, refuel station, substation, etc. The total planning area is about 1.33 square kilometer, and possibly GFA is more than 2 million square meter for this one. And this life cycle project management consultancy would actually spend a couple of years to support Tencent's implementations with various PM and CM scope, which is detailed here. And also the utilizations of digital tools is proved to be quite instrumental, in managing data, and also BIM delivery, and also support the client's plan of digital transformation. The HKUST new campus in Guangzhou, Guangzhou Nansha, briefly talked by Calvin previously. This one will synergize with and also maintain the same academic standard as that of its counterpart in Hong Kong. So we came across the comprehensive project delivery from feasibility study stage through preliminary design to detailed design to support HKUST's campaign of developing the campus to a smart and sustainable one. And as an example, we adopt a climate change approach that essentially had been used in Hong Kong. So so instead of doing the very traditional sort of 50 years return period flood protection standard, we adopt 3 different standards, 50 years, 100 years, and 200 years. Especially for very important infrastructure such as data center and also some substations, we adopt a 200 years return period, sort of designed to cater for the future climate change conditions. I mean, there should be plenty of large scale and exciting opportunities coming along in the Greater Bay Area, as all the cities continue to develop their communities and also connect closer with one another. So quite interestingly, I think I have never heard of any project that is designated as the so-called GBA project. But there should be certain attributes that I mean, projects in GBA are considered worthwhile for Hong Kong or international based entity to pursue. Such as the scale, complexity, strategic importance, collaborative opportunities, and so on. So some of the highlights are shown, in the following few slides. I think I'm not going to touch on too much about the Northern Metropolis, as it was also, talked by other, speakers. Also, moving on to the well development, MTR have actually put forward several future projects to the government, mostly in the new territories. So the one already highlighted by Oren previously, which is also in dark green here, is about the Hong Kong Shenzhen Western Railway. So I just want to supplement that, this is also associated with the Hong Kong's government plans of developing Hong Shui Kiu, which is going to be quite a new town and also a modern service centers. So people could live there, and also they want to drive, people also participate in working in Qinghai. So this sort of living and working mode, are enhanced by sort of a rail connectivity. Integrating Hong Kong and Macau to the national rail network is also a key transportation and logistics strategy, to boost the so-called 1 hour living cycle in GBA. So there are different plans initiated by the National Development and Reform Committee with respect to high-speed rail, intercity rail, and also the urban rail transit. And I think from some of the findings, the recent projects, they basically cover 13 different intercity rail lines and also metros. And also there are more than 5 TOD, big scale TOD, to be developed. So altogether, with budgetary cost over RMB 400 billion. There was a record high total of 210 million passengers transit through the 5 major airports of the Greater Bay Area before COVID. They all locate within 80 kilometers with one another. Despite COVID, each of them has its own expansion plan. I think, for example, the Hong Kong International Airport, they have the third runway projects due to complete by 2025. And it's quite apparent that, that there have been and will be competitions between the 5 airports. But one of the GBA policy is to strive for mutual beneficial sort of cooperations, such as minimizing, duplications of the routes, that could bring about inefficiencies in terms of passenger load, in terms of fuel utilizations. And also, airlines in Hong Kong and mainland, they may operate in the intermodal coach sharing service mode. I think Oren has also briefly talked about that. Interchange by air and other means of transport, such as high-speed ferries and also cross-boundary buses. Sorry, I didn't really translate everything to English. So this is basically some of the planning experience we have, encountered, quite recently over the GBA areas. And usually the upstream sort of planning works, they demand more international insight, coupling with local experience and local knowledge and need. And in many cases, they usually welcome international competitions or collaborations with the local design institute. So there have been many planning related opportunities in South China over the recent years. And actually that, brings my message to this slide about, challenges and opportunities. And, Foshan, on the top side, it is widely considered as an advanced manufacturing base. And also, there have been many TOD opportunities there. And the Shenzhen Zhongsan bridge is going to be open in 2023 or 2024. And that will actually connect Zhongsan and with the bridge, and that might bring synergies from the Shenzhen airport and also the Qinghai development to the rest. Hong Kong definitely will benefit from the northern Metropolis development and the collaborative projects with Qinghai as well. And in Macau, they will possibly strategize for business diversifications with the co-managed increased footprint in Hengqin. So lastly, I would just like to very briefly touch on the mutual recognitions of professional qualifications that actually support the professional enterprise and all the individuals to practice in the Greater Bay Area. I think the Hong Kong development bureaus of the government, they work together with the Guangdong statutory body. They have published these guidelines to facilitate the Hong Kong consultant enterprise and also the professionals starting business and practicing in GBA. So if the consultant satisfies the list 4 criteria, they are entitled to apply for the mutually recognized practice certificate. So I'm not going to touch on every single details, and you might refer to the link below. So in connections, they have also launched a reciprocal recognition system to enable those companies register in AACSB and EACSB to have the same identity of the respective registered mainland professional companies in China. So similarly, for those professionals who are registered under relevant registration board, such as Hong Kong HKIA or HKIE, they would be granted with the same practicing identity as for those professionals registered in China. Okay, so this slide just show the practice certificates issued by the different respective authorities from the Guangdong province, Qinghai, and Hengqin. I'm not going to touch on that in very detail. So as I said, you could refer to the link previously, and if you want to have more informative stuff about this, we can talk later. So I think this is the end of my part. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Philip. That was a very comprehensive presentation touching, focusing on Hong Kong, Macau, and Qinghai, as well as talking about Guangzhou. And also, I think it was interesting that you touched on opportunities in the Greater Bay Area for the professionals that who might be interested in participating. So it was actually, I'm sorry for the participants, we ran out of time, but I hope we can squeeze in a little bit discussion time to bring all the presentations together and talk about the way forward for GBA. I wanted to ask Professor Ye, you mentioned about the Hong Kong and Shenzhen as a twin city. And, we also did research, and I thought they could put Hong Kong and Shenzhen to become the new megacity of the area because there are a lot of synergies between the two. And what would you think would Hong Kong and Shenzhen be looking like to be the driver for GBA, but also what will it be post 47?
Thank you very much for the questions. Right, I think this is actually troubling us for a long time, and I think it will also continue to trouble us because in the 1980s we are talking about a borderless, place already. I still remember in 1990 we have some sort of exhibitions on that, right? And they haven't really started yet. I think this is mainly not because of infrastructure, not because of policy. I think because of the culture. Right, and so if we have more people going back and forth, right, then I think this will be, having created this environment for better cooperations. Actually, the living standard now in Shenzhen, to a certain extent, in some areas, not in the old areas, but the newly developed area like Qinghai and also like other areas like Nanshan, these are pretty high quality. I think our colleagues working in the Greater Bay Area, like Philip and also like Kevin, they also know about it, right? The quality is not bad, right? Actually, to a certain extent, higher than Hong Kong. But somehow a lot of people still think that the Greater Bay Area is somehow having problem, right? For example, like environment, like the security, and also like the health, right? So if this can be resolved and ironed out, and then maybe there will be this type of better development, because I think there is still some untrust between Hong Kong and people in the China side. Basically, I think it is our problem, not the other side.
Well, tapping into just now the question about Hong Kong and Shenzhen, Professor Ye, I also have a question for you. Specifically about like when we talk about the Northern Metropolis, we are betting a lot on the technology hub development in Hong Kong. How do you see the Hong Kong versus Shenzhen, which is relatively speaking a fairly established like technology hub right now, even within China, right? How do you see Hong Kong be able to compete with that? And what do you think is the edge that we can either like support Shenzhen or yeah, how do you see the difference? I mean, I would assume like we can't just repeating what Shenzhen has already been achieved.
No, I think this is a great question, right? Basically, I think there be another side of the question. Actually, some people ask me, do Shenzhen or Greater Bay Area or PRD need Hong Kong in terms of technology development, right? I think this is something that I think we have to think about. But actually, so this is the so-called reindustrialization, right? In the 1970s, we have this type of what I call industry 2.0, and then basically we go into the PRD with that type of industries. And now the whole PRD is now turning into high tech. And how are we going to be engaged And then are we only totally relying on our offices and our financial center? Will be able to be good enough? And so in that case, the Northern Metropolis will give us this type of connectivity in both areas. The first is the connectivity with the Qinghai, but obviously I have some disagreement. Maybe we can discuss that more about connectivity. I think the airport should be linked up with railway, but unfortunately it's still not that one. I still remember, I think in the, what Kelvin has been talking about, or what Owen has been talking about, right? It's about the railway link, right? Unfortunately, even in the Northern Metropolis, it's still not there, linking up the airport. This is, I think, is the missing link between the two. And so I think, and also for the other type of thing, I think you have no choice. Unless we are just saying that, well, okay, forget about the development, we just live on our own type of competitive advantage, which is really declining and also eroding very rapidly. So this is somehow, I can't see any way out except, we have to somehow put forward our 2050 plan to now 2030 to make it happen as quickly as possible, and also to show that Hong Kong is actually willing to work together with the PRD. At present, since the 2019 outline development plan, we have done nothing, right? And so this is basically some sort of a showcase we are willing to have. But obviously, we understand this is only the beginning. We do not have a full rough discussion about the Northern Metropolis. Is this the right strategy? The scale? I think this have to be further discussed.
I think I agree. Hong Kong needs to be very careful about how it positions itself and works with Shenzhen rather than competing. I think it's like how to complement each other might be a better way. I think since railway connectivity and airport connectivity was mentioned by Professor A, Oren, you want to come in and actually take briefly, thank you.
Yeah, I'll make it very brief. So since it's nice to have a disagreement, because it won't be interesting if we didn't disagree on something. So without getting into a lot of technical issues, the issue of airport connectivity was looked at actually at great detail at the time. It wasn't dismissed because of the lack of cooperation from Hong Kong. It just ran into real incompatibility with the logic of aviation, the aviation business. The aviation business is not built on collaboration between airports or airlines. And so it would have been an enormous investment of infrastructure that would have come from government, that would have served no commercial interest, and frankly wouldn't really serve the traveling public. It was looked at by at least 2 detailed consultancies that I am aware of and I read, and discussed in numerous forums with the airport authority, in conferences and so on. So honestly, it didn't come from a place of protectionism or anything. It really just didn't make any commercial sense, not even close. So I think that Hong Kong's money and the mainland's money, everybody's money, is better spent on connectivity concepts that will serve the public and be viable and useful. So that's my response to that.
Okay, thank you. I think another point I wanted to raise was about the environmental impact and ecological impact about this large development in GBA. And I'd probably put that across to Philip as well as Calvin, if you want to touch that. How can we avoid the larger impacts of this Greater Bay Area development?
Well, thank you, Sujata. I think is development in Greater Bay Area is in no difference to other developments that on positive side it might generate economic benefits to some of the cities, and in a way it would cause pollutions to one another's. And I think the key is that nowadays we all talk about sustainability and sustainable development. It definitely should underpin all of the things we're going to do. So I think the key is to set up a really good framework or guidelines for all projects to follow through. And I don't believe there is a coordinate sort of standard across the GBA area, because different areas have different standard. In China, they at the moment they have the 2030, 2060. 2030 is the carbon pit, and 2060 is the net carbon zero, sort of high level strategic target. But down to the project level, I don't believe they have set up a very standardized sort of standard or target. So I think it might be good to to coordinate a good standards across all the GBA development, and that might possibly minimize the environmental impact. And our experience in the past, I think past 5 to 10 years about sustainability in in GBA or in Shenzhen, in Guangzhou, they are more really focused on the water side. So basically, how to create a more harmonious waterfront, coastal development, eco shoreline, that sort of things, and with the spongy city and so on. And I think it is also a good way to to start with, and it might extend to a more coordinated sort of national standard, that could control the sustainable development in different stages of the project implementations.
Concur with Philip. I don't think there is a universal policy applying to GBA in terms of environmental protection or ecological conservation. But I just want to supplement one point at planning level. Nowadays, the city in China are practicing very vigorously. When they undertake the planning, they call it the multiple plan integration, i.e. they integrate the socio-economic plans, they integrate the land use plan, land use utilization plan, and one important part is the environmental and ecological. So at the very high level, they already quite alert about the bottom line that they cannot touch upon, the so-called absolute local area. And I think at the project level, just like any projects in every cities, that have sophisticated legislation, practice, or requirement that we have to observe. So every project has to go through the regulation in terms of the environmental protection, and what kind of mitigation measures you have to propose if you really generate some sort of a negative, so-called negative impacts. And I think, carbon neutrality is already a national target. So probably this is the very good indicator or some sort of measures that for cities, for regions, even for projects, have to take into account. In future, maybe there may be a trading of the carbon emission. That may be something that we have to explore further. But generally, I concur with Philip in this respect. Yes.
Yeah, there are. Thank you, Kelvin. There are some questions from the chat, from the audience. I would like to take those now. Vincent Dio talks about how is it like how will it be like living in GBA? Can anybody answer that question? And also another, maybe I think you may want to answer this question first, because to Philip, what will be the metrics that will be used to determine the success of the 1 hour living circle? And what are the implications of these metrics for designing and thinking about future cities and carbon footprints? So answer that first, and afterwards maybe Kelvin and I think others, Oren, can talk about how it will be to live in the GBA. Philip?
Right. to in terms of how we're going to measure the success of the 1 hour living circle, we talk about matrix is called quantitative assessment, and I think obviously we want to shorten the traveling time between cities, but then bear in mind that we definitely want to deliver that in a smart and sustainable way. So I think one of the other key measures is how much carbon emission it generates throughout the so-called 1 hour journey. And from that, I think there are quite a lot of different international standards already established. For example, in the UK, some of the quite big sort of developments like Heathrow an extension, and also High Speed 2, they adopt the PAS 2080. That is actually a carbon management framework in infrastructures established by the Carbon Trust, and I think that sort of standard is actually quite important that every project in the future should follow to drive down the carbon emissions. And I think if we could do that by managing the approaches, and also managing at different delivery stage, from the project startup, and then design, constructions, and also through the operation and maintenance stage, we control the carbon emission at different levels, and have a good reporting channels to actually reflect that, and that could be reflect on the district and also the national level, and in a way it's kind of beneficial to the world as a whole. So that is my insight about that.
Yeah, can you want to answer Professor A. Kelvin about how it would be to live in GBA?
Well, I think in China, I think the quality of life is improving because of the rise of the per capita GDP, just like in Hong Kong, right? And they had actually, in terms of environmental development, I think they also, just like in Hong Kong, I think in the 60s and 70s, we are not very concerned about it. But later in the year 2000s, etc., we are more and more concerned. I think this is the same, what I call the path of development, because as you get richer, you would like to be having a higher quality. And a lot of the urban renewal areas, that was these type of built-up areas in Owu, and also this type of old areas, I think now are undergoing rapid urban renewal, right? I think for people who work in the PRD, we know about it, and these are all the stuff upgrading. For the newly developed areas, I think they are having a much higher living standard. But this is only for the built environment. I think in terms of living space, obviously it's much better than Hong Kong, right? Because it's cheaper, right? But more importantly is the environment of the neighborhood is also very, very good, right? Because they do have a very good planning system. They take care not only in terms of sales of land, but also take care of this open space, etc. But one thing that is make Hong Kong people do not want to live in the PRD, mainly is not because of the built environment, because of two or three reasons. I think we have in Hong Kong there are a lot of studies that carry out. First of all, about security. The second is about health, right? And the rest, I think, if you go to the so-called the Hai'an, right? Okay, or some new areas, right? Basically, you'll find that the quality of restaurants is even better than Hong Kong. Even if you go to the Futian, the rapid train station, right? Oh, you find that the restaurants are very nice, right? So the quality of life is more or less in terms of moving around, etc. It's the same. It's the software. Basically, it's about the security, about the health, about the education system that prohibit a lot of people going there.
With all this connectivity, do you foresee multi-city living in the future within GBA?
No, it all depends on job housing balance, right? Basically, if, for example, we do not have a lot of jobs in Hong Kong, obviously people need to go there and work. At present, I think we already find that a lot of people are living in the PRD and crossing the border to come to Hong Kong to work, right? In the future, if they have more job opportunities, I think this all depends on job opportunities.
I think the last question for the day, I'll kind of combine two. One is, how would people actually get involved in all these planning initiatives? That is one. I think some wanted to share how to get the professional qualifications and everything. I think Florence already put the link in the chat. But to Oren specifically, do you think, this last question is the second part, do you think there is a demand for foreign architects to be practicing in GBA?
I can only comment on my area of expertise, which is airports and transportation. And I would say very limited opportunity, unfortunately, because there are multiple reasons for that. But mostly because these are, they tend to be big projects which are government led, and they tend to go realistically to the local design institutes. As is one of the examples that I showed in Shenzhen Airport, and actually more than, I mean, airports have done competitions that foreign companies have participated in China for sure. I think that if you ask those companies how much money they made on those projects, I think the answer will be sobering. And these are big companies. These are not small companies. I mean, the reality is that, and I'm just being honest and direct about it. Sometimes they want this. They still, and less so, want the ideas from the foreign consultants, but that's all. And so there's a competition, and then it goes to the LDI, and that's the end of the story. And if you recover your costs, consider yourself lucky. Again, I'm being just honest about it. I think for small architects, I just don't see anything in infrastructure that is accessible. Of course, there's a lot that is accessible in the private sector, and the big guys like Arup and AECOM were on this call. They have their ways of doing various engineering-related services. I have yet to see small-scale architects, foreign architects, who have access to any infrastructure project in China, much less a profitable one. So that's my honest and disappointing answer. I wish it was different. We keep trying, but
yeah, understand. I think Kelvin and our Philip, I'm thinking the answer for how to get involved in these planning initiatives. One simple answer might be join AECOM or ARU. Would you differ? Is there another way?
Or an LDI.
Yes, please contact me.
All right, and one last question, because somebody else posted it, which I wanted to ask also. With post-COVID, there's been a lot of disruption. Post-COVID, what is it going to be like? And this is for Professor Ye.
I think that we are all waiting for us to cross the border, right? There are a lot of opportunities are waiting for us. But unfortunately, because of this 2.5 years of this type of, being bound in Hong Kong, we can't go anywhere. I think this is really hurting our economy and hurting all our integrations. They are ready and we are ready, but because of COVID-19, everybody is not ready.
So once it opens, everybody will be going all the way on both sides. That's what you think.
I think the whole world needs to change. Right? I don't think this is a norm. I hope it's not a norm. Right?
Okay.
Everybody is now suffering, particularly those in Hong Kong now.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, yeah.
Yes.
Amy,
well, to respond to Professor Ye's earlier comment, I actually have my practice in Shenzhen, so I have been commuting. I've been living in Hong Kong and commuting to China
Shenzhen every day for work. So just want to say this is possible, and it's actually quite interesting experience. And I look forward to the border opening up as well. So I'm going to make a quick closing remarks. Thank you everyone for joining us this evening. And once again, thanks to all our speakers, Professor Ye, Calvin, Oren, and Philip, for sharing your experience working in the Greater Bay Area. And thank you to Sujata for leading the moderator session that covered both the challenges and opportunities in the overall regional development. We also like to thank our collaborative partner AECOM, especially to Sean, who makes the remarks at the beginning, and also Lemren for the support. So our 25th Anniversary Symposium actually has 3 parts in total. Tonight is our first event, and our next event will be June 16th, and the title is Urban Regeneration and Development. So the discussion will focus a little bit zoom in on by city, Hong Kong and Shenzhen, and the topics would cover Northern Metropolis development, also TOD, smart city, city resilience, including overall natural ecology challenges and strategies. Our event 3 will be on placemaking. So we'll zoom in further on different types of urban planning placemaking strategy. So the symposium will also be wrapped up with a tentative GBA tour towards the end of the year, which we really hope it would happen. So we hope you'll stay tuned to our update, and we look forward to seeing you in our June event. So thank you everyone, and I hope you enjoy the evening.